Welcome to So Booking Cool, it's Jewel B. Today's guest is a community leader dedicated to supporting historically Black colleges and universities, as well as African American churches. In addition to education, she has worked in politics, nonprofit organizations, and the private sector. She is the director of Synergy Training Solutions, which is dedicated to advancing the education and economic empowerment of marginalized and underserved communities. She developed a reading program and has written many books of her own, including one from her series, Black Tech, Leaders in Technology, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, a nonfiction children's book series designed to showcase the contributions that African Americans have made and are still making in the development of the U.S. and the world. Here with us today, she is Theresa Merritt-Watson.
Hi, how are you doing? And thank you so much for having me.
I'm doing well, thank you, and it is a pleasure to speak with you today. Um,
Thank you.
you're very welcome, Miss Merritt-Watson. So, in doing my research, I saw, one of your trailers, one of your videos that goes into the book and about you as an author and the cute ambassador, Cairo. I believe, yes, adorable. I want to learn more about that, how you came up with that. But yeah, what is the second most used device that you use after the computer, as you mentioned to Cairo?
Well, the second most used would be my phone, but I do use the computer the most. I love a big screen, so I do use it. And the thing about the phone, I'm in Philadelphia right now, and just across the bridge is Jesse Russell, which is the elements that your phone is designed from was built by him. And so if Black people knew that the thing that they talk on the most, the thing that they love, the thing that they want to go to bed with, have at the table was invented by a Black man, they would take a different look, but they just pick it up as if it was nothing, because that's the way our society is. It has been and still is right now. We don't capture the greatness within the African American community. And when I get the second thing that I really enjoy as a right technology is a GPS, because I don't, places I go, um, I just don't know it. I don't want to get lost, and not to say it's perfect all the time, but that's my second most used thing really is the GPS, because I do spend quite a bit of time in my car. And Gladys West invented the GPS. But when you think about it, what I've done is when I go to schools, one of the things I ask the kids to call the devices by the person's name. So it can be instilled in you who invented these things. And so that is one of the great elements about being able to go into the classroom, to the rec center, which is actually where I am right now. To be able to discuss and encourage people to utilize the names of things. And so it can be reinforced. And you have to know that until we start taking ownership of our education, and until we start taking the ownerships of that, the problem is going to be that we give people the opportunity to tell us, do whatever they want to do. But if we know what we're doing when we go in, the likelihood of that happening is very slim. And so that is something I want people to stay in tune with, is that you have to be able to own up to it in order for you to take ownership of it. And that's where we are right now.
Wow. Okay. What a way to start. I love it. Getting right into it. Your passion and everything. So when did this passion for helping the Black community, especially where history is concerned and in education and in the form of church, when did you realize that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I have always realized that I wanted to do something of this magnitude. Well, I won't say always, for a long time, even as a child, I remember things happening to my grandfather because he owned about 100 acres of land. And it was farmland, by the way, so it was a lot of work. So, and when people tried to take it from him, we were sitting outside. As a child, you didn't know the dynamics of what was going on and of what was going on. You didn't know that dynamics. And so what happened is that we go on, and as time progressed, I went to all black school, which is where I got most of my learning from, and most of my learning came from that all black environment. Um, and so I will say by the eighth grade, I had really a real interest in it because it took on an ownership. It took on a space where we had segregated a few years earlier, but the treatment was so different than what I had left in the that I had left in the elementary school. And then we had black teachers. It seemed like the black teachers were teaching the black kids. But we had a teacher named Mr. Exon, and he was the first person I had ever seen that said to us that there's difference between the way people treat and see black people. And so even back in the day, they used to have a map that you pull down and show the different countries and things like that. You show the different countries. Um, and so what would happen is that he would show us this is what Africa looks like in real life. And then this is the way Africa, what we're supposed to show you. So from a long time ago, we have been seeing them depicting Africa in such a negative tone. And to the point where when I was in second grade, I believe is when we started studying history, they didn't teach us the books that were given, the African books, social study books that was given by the state. Miss Harrison and Miss Howell, they went and got history books. They got history books that depicted Africa in a way where you had, it was a civilized country with buildings and infrastructure. It didn't look like what we have now, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So your teacher said, this is what we're supposed to show you.
Right.
Oh, wow.
But our teachers have been bold for so long that I don't think that they knew that they were not supposed to, what they weren't supposed to do because they had been bold for so long. And that has been a real blessing for a lot of us because we don't have the disadvantage. Actually, I'm not opposed to schools being separate. I think teaching our own kids is a plus.
When did you start to feel that way?
Well,
And
I felt that way. In fact, I have 6 kids, and when they got their allowance, they had to either quote Paul Laurence Dunbar or Langston Hughes, give me some black facts before I gave them their allowance, and so that's been going for a long time, and all of them right now understand the importance of Black history, and so. And most of my kids, I would say, 5 people in our family went to Hampton. And so it was, they went with the tools that they needed. They understand and understood the dynamics of what it is. So when you enter, wherever you enter, that's where you're supposed to be. There's no one greater than you, and you're not greater than anyone else. That's the way I raised them. And I was serious about them not getting their allowance and it wasn't a whole lot of money, by the way, but whatever it was, and you were not getting it until you recited a poem. And they had no problem in doing that. They did that for many years.
how would they feel when they would succeed and get that allowance?
Oh, they were like, well, it never was competitive. First they started out trying to do the shortest poem because Langston Hughes got some short poems, so and then as time progressed, they started, competing to get the longest poem so they can remember it. Just to showcase the amount didn't change just because do a 2-page or 3-page poem that he had written. None of that changed. But they appreciate it. That's what I should say to you. They appreciate it now. They actually tell me now how much they appreciated it.
That's wonderful. I have to say so myself. You know, what,
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I
yeah,
did enjoy it. When you got six, you got to set some standards on that. I think that people need to understand that you have to set standards when you have kids, no matter whether you have one or you have um you have one or you have 10. I just happen to have six, and your standards are really important. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing. I enjoy parent classes because it is it's it's an opportunity to shed light on things that people may not even think about. Because sometimes people don't think about the cause and effect of having a child. So when you working with a child, not making them accountable and responsible at a young age has a long-term consequence. And but most of the time you say, "Oh, I'll do it," you know, and you don't think about them growing up, not thinking, not knowing how much harm that can actually bring a child. But I enjoy writing the book, I must say so. And I enjoy learning about Black people and the greatness that they have. If you can take an environment, a school environment, and they had taught Black history the way it was, the way it is, and in conjunction with the things that they taught us that weren't true. We have a lot of information in school that people who wrote the curriculum understood that there was some of that stuff wasn't true. They knew from a long time ago that Christopher Columbus never stepped foot on in the North America, in the United States. They knew that from a long time ago, but people have died thinking that Christopher Columbus discovered America. And Martin Luther King said that if we um, ever lose our ability to be creative or be problem solving, we will have some serious problems. And that's where we are right now. We do have some serious problems because we are in a state where our kids are not problem solving. They're not critical thinkers. And that's how we got the inventions and the science uh, research that we have today, because those people are critical thinkers. You don't have to be, you could be in a low wealth community
mhm.
and still be successful. But people would think because you grew up in the projects or somewhere, you couldn't be successful. And success does not necessarily mean that you have to go to college. That's another myth. And so if you, in my book, I talk about the HBCUs because I want people to know how valuable they are. I talk about uh, Lewis Latimer, Frederick Jones, Garrett Morgan, because every one of their instruments that they invented, we use today. And if it had not been for them, that we wouldn't have lights in Africa or England or France, because Lewis Latimer made the filament. People, when I go to class, it always tickled me when the kids say, "Well, I thought Edison did that." Well, Edison couldn't sustain the filament. Lewis Latimer made the light be able to stay on. And the people have to realize there's so many inventions that were actually stolen from the African American because we couldn't register a patent at the time. We couldn't do this. Now, he did give Lewis Latimer the I think Lewis Latimer took him to court. He won that, but that showed up at Lewis Latimer, even though he ended up selling it. And the one that really is really thought-provoking is the gas mask in West Virginia. They had coal, West Virginia was a coal mine. And one of the true things that they did is that they had the coal fall in. And so people were dying in there and they couldn't breathe. And so Garrett Morgan created a gas mask, and first they wouldn't use it. Then because the people continued to die, they used the gas mask. But when you read about the story, you never hear about Garrett, that the gas mask that they used to save those people's lives was of Garrett Morgan. So these are things that if we don't have our kids at a young age start this, they'll continue to go to school and not build their self-esteem will be impacted because they don't see themselves threaded through the system. Like when I think that sometimes when you are in these environments and you're the only one invited, you have to ask yourself why. And that's what our kids are doing. When you're talking about Robert E. Lee, Hoover, and you never see anybody in the history book, in the financial institution, in the social studies that look like you until February when they bring up 6 or 7 people, you think that you haven't done anything. What have been your contribution? And that's what I think that we're missing. And quite frankly, I think teachers could have really pushed this really hard when they're in their classroom. And so you asked me about Caro. Caro was designed initially to give people history every week. Once a week, we give you a black fact. So your kids, and it's only like 1 minute to 2 minutes tops. Um, so that your kids can just get something and the parents, and it's free. You can go on YouTube or you could go on Instagram at Black Tech Book, and you could pull up a carol and just listen to them. And that's what our commitment is to get it out there where our people are. Recently, we created a Patreon, and that when you get facts every day. And so that we're just trying strategies to be able to use this. Now, you did mention Lead and Read. Lead and Read won't be kicked off until April. That we're still building the library because we're going to use the churches. The church will join a nonprofit, and then their members will get an African American student in the community, and the community could be anywhere in the United States. Because I have a couple of kids that I do in North Carolina, and so they will be able to get these kids, and that kid will call them once a week and read to them for 10 minutes. And then all that information would be gathered on the database, the book, the number of pages, the author, and the student will continue to read. And that way, our kids may be getting something, but once a week. And it's not all Black books that they'll be reading. Some books may be things related to their class. Now, one student, he was in 10th grade. Let's say he was in 10th grade, but he read at a second grade level. So this makes it easier for him to call up somebody he have never seen, and then read to them.
What is
Yeah.
the best way, Miss Merritt-Watson, for students to navigate the history that they might be learning or have learned in school, and then the history that they're learning at home?
Well, home is the major problem. I would say we're going to talk about home first,
Mhm.
because I think in order for this program to work, for us to really get solid in our history, it has to come from home. There's no allegiance to African Americans that teach our history. There are some real ugly parts about our history. And for somebody else to be able to tell that story, it's going to be doctored up a little bit, I believe. But when your kid is like 3 years old or 2 years old, when you're reading them books, let them see the pictures of themselves. That makes them leave home with the idea of importance of their self-esteem is impacted. I mean, we still have people that's getting baby dolls that don't even look like them. If the parents don't know it, they can't pass it on. That's why I think home is important. And so you can't just tell your kids to read. These things help also build the parent self-esteem about who they are and their greatness. And with school, you can incorporate and nurture. And I have a partnership right now with a project called 3Ps, is passion, pursuit, and purpose. And in that, one of the things that I look at is the passion part. The passion for a child. Every child has a passion, but our kids' passion not nurtured in school, because people think if you come from low wealth environment, you have no passion. That is the most that is not true. Everybody has a passion. Now, your daddy may be working on a car, and a lot of men work on their car. You know what it takes to for you to do a motor, do transmission, change the oil, the tools you have to use, the measurements. Give me a 3-inch wrench or whatever they're asking for. Is the same measurements, same thing you have to do when you're talking about, the distance of space, because you have to learn these things. And so, but people will not put the two together to see that you're still learning. and you're still exposing yourself and you're still engaging in your passion. And then it gives you the opportunity to showcase, how do I get there? How now I have a lot of little passions going on. What do I do? And so that would be something that I think that home can do. Home will do it, and then school, the teacher will go, "Oh, Johnny like working on Mustangs. That's his thing, And now they've designed the engine this way, and so we had to get some longer wrenches, and I think we had to get 16 inches, whatever they have to get. And then when Bob comes in and says, "Oh, my dad is head of the chemistry department, and we had to light some beakers or something." I don't know, but they still are the same things that it takes for him to be embracing his passion. How he pursued are the same elements necessary for you to help a kid reach their purpose. And for school, they can nurture a kid's purpose if you believe the kids have a passion. You can nurture a kid's passion, but you got to believe the kids actually have one, no matter where they came from.
Wow. Okay, that is a word right there, Miss Merritt-Watson. What are your thoughts on figures from Black history who get talked about kind of a lot? Because some of them are more known than others, right?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think that that is?
Well, I think it is because if they expand on it, you start seeing your greatness. And if you want to keep a person where they are, you only give them enough information and enough ingredients that they will only see what you want them to see. Now, grant you, everybody, the Martin Luther King, the Jesse Jackson, the Rosa Parks, those people are important. But when you want to do a deep dive into the tangible things that you can touch, the GPS, these are those most of the people that they tell our kids about, advocate people. They're not telling them about Benjamin Banner that designed a clock out of wood. They're not talking about that because a kid would get curious, how in the world did he make that happen? And because none of the other parts were made out of wood. And so if you want to keep somebody where they are, you only share enough for them to be curious for a few minutes.
Yeah, what are your thoughts also, Miss Merritt-Watson, on older people saying that they didn't know about Juneteenth and they didn't know about some historical figures such as Ida B. Wells, for example?
I'm
Because I've
having a
had
hard time.
conversations with people like
I'm
that.
having a hard time figuring out that some Black woman don't know about Ida B. Wells, right? So,
It sounds shocking. It does.
but the Juneteenth, people would look at it as a Texas thing. And that was a major problem. It didn't relate to them. And that's why I think a lot of people in some of the southern states and northern states, because I've gone to, what's amazing is that you go to some school and you see the Black kids that have never heard of HBCUs. They've never heard of a Hampton or Howard. And I'm asking myself, and so I have developed a sense of sarcasm, and I would say stuff like, so have you heard of Harvard? And because how you not hear of Howard and Hampton and you've heard of Harvard? They serve, they're not your priority. And we just start celebrating Juneteenth in a way. The history has always been there, but it was on purpose, not given to us in a way that we all start embracing it. And there's quite a few things that are that way.
You believe clearly that African American history should be a part of a child's daily reading regimen because of the benefits that come with knowing one's history and
Mhm.
also so people are not left in the dark. So, are there any cases, what would you say are the best cases you can think of that you would say prove this to be true?
Well, I've been researching, trying to see, and there's a lot of families that have committed themselves to actually making sure that their kid know African American history. They've committed themselves to it. Their kids, they do better. They have a sense of pride. You can watch them in a room of people, um, and they own the room. it gives you a sense of ownership. That's one of the reasons why I really believe in HBCUs. I think when kids go sometimes, it gives them a sense of ownership, a sense of who they are. But I know families that are committed to their kids knowing history, and they own their space. You can't just feed them anything. They own it. So it's so important. I would love to do a dissertation or a research project on it and just talk to those families and follow their kids and things like that.
And earlier, you speaking of kids and students, you did also mention, educating your own six children about
Yeah,
history. You used themes like or concepts like Black facts. So
yes.
oftentimes we hear that, people are not teaching history or they're not teaching enough of it. But also, I would like to know, what are your thoughts about the best ways to teach history, particularly to children?
Well, I think the best way to teach history is to do it very young. And see, I'm not talking about um, the men, people going to church, come back home and get a basket and sit around a tree of hanging a black man, and their kids are there and they call that fun. I'm not talking about that, but I am talking about the Paul Laurence Dunbar or the Gladys West or the Bessie Coleman. Because we spent years thinking that Amelia Earhart was the first female to fly, and she wasn't. And so we won't say Bessie Coleman is the first black pilot. No, she was the first one to fly, and she had to go to France just to get her license. So I don't think that we should continue to send our kids in a space that wasn't initially designed for us. And you know yourself that we had to even fight to go to the same school or get the same information. So why would you take this space and actually have your child go into a space that you know is not really designed to teach you the history that you know? Make sure your kids know before they go home, before they leave home. And if you start teaching them, like when they pick up the books and you're picking up the little hard cardboard books, it should be black people in there and black facts, and the curiosity for a child will start very young. How does he do this and how do he do that? And the facts have to be true facts, that something that you research. Like I was listening to three people last week do a information about black facts, and two of them talk about um, the peanut butter. And so the peanut butter um, was not designed, was not made by
George Washington
George
Carver.
Washington Carver. It was not, and he did not invent peanut butter. But so what I'm saying, people get you have to look it up opposed to people just telling you the facts. And so the facts needs to come from home. I don't think that we will ever get a leg up if we depend on the schools to actually teach us the Black history.
What platforms or resources can you recommend for for anyone, whether they're at home teaching their kids or just in general, to have the facts of African American history?
Well, there's quite a few books. You do have to go, and if you can't afford it, I tell people if they can't afford a book, go to the library. The library, and if the library do not have it, you ask them. I have no problem asking the library to get something that I want, and but we should build our library and circulate the material. I have books I just circulate to kids so that they can learn it, and I ask them to give them to someone else. That's what that's the way I handle that. But we have to do this as a team, as a unit, and build our cohesiveness back together, because it's not a natural process for African Americans to act like individuals, because we have always spent our life as a community. You need something, I get it for you. Or I help you win it. If you need help, if you need, like, I never went to a daycare. Why? Because my grandmother watched us, my grandmother. And so you always had that family type environment. I don't even know if my mother ever paid her, but that was the community. And we always gave away food, because I told you I grew up on a farm, so we always gave away food. and it was never a problem. Never even gave it a second thought about what you give away because you didn't need it, so you help the next person. My biggest thought here is that our commitment should be done with us. And if you can't do it, ask your neighbor, say, I won't be home till 7. So you're reading at 6:30. Can you get John and have him come over so you can read to him too? There's nothing wrong with that.
Speaking of community, how has the Black community responded to your efforts and your services? Those who you have helped and those who you serve, such as schools, families, churches, etc.
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, Jewel, I would have loved for schools. I still love for schools to be more engaging, um, to be more engaging. The community, because the community is slow coming because, let's see, how would I say this? I think because I'm new to the area that I'm in right now, but my home base is engaging. And sometimes it's just when you have something new and I'm usually behind the scene person.
Okay.
And now I'm more in the forefront. And I have two things that I'm saying to you. You need to learn African American history. You need to nurture your kids' passionate and make sure they know how to pursue it. And I'm asking you to do these things, but it's not just for the child. Because to tell you the truth, I did a training for a group of about 100 of people between the ages of 55 and 85. And not one person knew anybody that was in my book, not one. And so that tells you how are we teaching our kids? I just don't, I don't have the magic wand for this, but I know that we cannot depend on other people to do it for us. And one of the things I think people need to take a look at is to not spend money. Um, you don't need the latest and the greatest. I have one of the person that used to do parent training. I still do parent training. Actually, that's one of my favorite things to actually do um, for teen moms and dads. And they might have gotten their first apartment at 18 or something like that because they had a kid. And they want to get all these furniture bills and things like that. And I said, their school district, well, some of the school district, you could get a voucher, and that voucher would allow you to get sofa, things for your house that you don't have to pay.
Mhm.
And yes, well, it's this and it's that. But then I would show them people houses that you think went to the store and got their furniture and they didn't, so you have to be creative in how you spend your money. That's, our economic status in the Black community is really bad. Our money stays in our community six hours. So it's a lot of work that has to be done in our community. But if we don't take the time to do it, 60 years from now, we'll be talking about the same thing. I don't plan to leave this earth without something major have been impactful for something major, where our kids are, they're picking up their books and they're actually learning about the Black history. Anytime they go to school, you can see their self-esteem just glowing inside of them. You can't tell them Christopher Columbus discovered America. And then you say, well, how did he discover something? If your first question would be, how did he discover America when Black people and Indian was already in this land? You can't discover something that people already there, you know? So these are your critical thinking skills, you know? So just some things that we've been told that we know is not true. And I think you ought to leave space for the kids to question it.
How would you like to see tech evolve, but as it pertains to Black people?
Well, that's a loaded question because it's going to evolve. How do I think it has to have some management components to it as it relates to a child. I think for me, I don't think a child should take a cell phone to their bedroom at night. No child should be allowed to have a phone at dinner time. It has to be something that you manage, not something that you hold on to like you grip to it. And so that's one of the things that I would love to see parents do is to have more control over how they engage with technology. That's what I think until we do that to allow a kid just to everything they do, they cleaning up with their phone. No, that's not going to happen.
Do you think that tech has impacted society mostly negatively or positively?
I think it, well, for me, I think it's a positive thing. I think we have allowed it, anything you can abuse. And I think it has been abused because it can be, where TV cartoon used to be the babysitter, tech is now the babysitter,
Mm.
you know? So I think anything could be abused, but it's a good tool that can be managed.
Tell us some of your favorite feedback that you've gotten for Black tech so far, and how many books are in the series so far?
Was 20.
Oh, see, I knew it was a lot.
Yes, 20. My next book coming out is Blacks in STEM. We have a series called Black In, is Blacks In, and it's Blacks in STEM, Blacks in Science, Blacks in Math, Blacks in Music. And so we're coming out with that. But the books themselves, we have 20 books right now. And once we finish that, is to make sure that the kids is written at first, third grade level. So if I come to your house, I pick up the book, I can learn at least one Black fact. And that's designed on purpose. If you do it any older than that, people would just look at it and not really gather the fact in the book. And so people love the older people really love the way it's written because it's very simple for them to be able to engage in getting some history. And they take something, they'll say, I've been places where people have picked up the book, said, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And so this is the book. But when you open up the book, this is Garrett Morgan. You see the writing,
Yeah.
and you can learn about the light. And it says, when traveling to my school, Garrett Morgan invention helps us to get there safely. It tells us when to slow down, stop, and go. And Garrett, on the next page, it said Garrett Morgan invented the traffic light. He was born in Paris, Kentucky on May 4th, March 4th, and he lived until the 27th, July 27th, 1963. And he's a self-taught engineer. And so it tells you that, my goal was to make sure I highlight the HBCUs and make sure that these people go and have their own pride about whatever they decide to do in their space. And so I made sure that happens.
And on that note, Miss Theresa Merritt-Watson, thank you for speaking to So Booking Cool today. Enjoyed having you and definitely would love to speak with you again in the future about the next book and the book after that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. But if they want to purchase my book is on Amazon and it is a bestseller. And so if you want more information, you could just contact me at Synergy Network LLC1 at Gmail.
Guys, definitely make sure that you check out everything that Miss Theresa Merritt-Watson has going on, her projects, and to all the viewers and listeners, until next time, so booking cool.
Thank you so much. Enjoy.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.